If you are not breathing deep and low and slow enough, basically you're hyperventilating, so you're putting your body into that sympathetic state, you're going to kick yourself out of ketosis. You're going to inhibit your body's ability to burn fat for fuel. Thank you again for having me on your show. Yeah, so after navigating my way through a lifelong struggle of severe anorexia, bulimia, and anxiety, I have since become impassioned about lifestyle interventions in the treatment and prevention of chronic disease. Very much a huge proponent of all things, and a huge geek of all things mental, physical, and spiritual health. And essentially, I feel like I've had my second chance at living life. It was a simple dietary protocol that saved my life, gave it back to me and more, which was essentially the carnivore diet. And then another sort of like parallel journey of just putting my body in an environment that was conducive to healing. So I'm also as much outspoken about physical and physiological health. I'm also very much a proponent of following your heart and your intuition and our innate wisdom, which is something we are all born with. That's a little bit of my puzzle. I'm still trying to piece it all together. I've reframed it as I'm just a multi-passionate person, and I've learned a lot, and I have struggled a lot as well. And I would hope that by sharing my journey and some of the things that have really helped me will help others. That's me. I have a podcast. I'm a nutrition practitioner and advisor and health coach, singer-songwriter, actor, speaker, and human.
That's awesome. And your podcast itself, you've had some really cool guests. It's called The Human Theatre, and you dive into mainly the nutrition side of things, but you also go into many different modalities and stuff, which I love. Is there a recent or past guest that sticks out for you that maybe you've learned a lot from? What's that journey been like?
Sure, that's a difficult question because I suppose it's like choosing my favorite child. I can't really. Every guest that I've had on the show has just blown my mind in one way or another. And what's quite unique about just interviewing a diverse range of people in different industries has been just having my mind open to so many things. But I suppose recently, I'm still trying to comprehend what I've learned from Dr. Andrea Salcedo. She's a gynecologist and obstetrician in America. She works in California, and how she has been able to explain gynecological disorders that are rampant right now. It's like a silent epidemic with a lot of females. How she's explained them through the lens of the metabolism, and essentially that gynecological disorders are the female manifestation of metabolic dysfunction and metabolic disease. So she blew my mind, even on endometriosis alone, which is something that she personally struggled with. She's done a lot of research in the field now, and she's actually come to the realization that endometriosis is a gut dysbiosis problem. And my mind has been blown because I had never thought to consider endometriosis as a gut dysbiosis problem. So essentially what's happening is that from a leaky gut, there are inflammatory molecules that get released into the bloodstream, and specifically in the manifestation of something like endometriosis, those inflammatory sort of like molecules and cytokines get into the fallopian tubes. And that causes a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort for women who struggle with the condition. And in fact, a lot of females have to get a hysterectomy. They have to get their ovaries removed due to the severity of it and the pain. And of course, there are spectrums and there are levels of the disease. It's a chronic disease, and it is progressive as well. But I have a lot of people near and dear to me that have had the diagnosis. So this was just like, if it's as wonderful, not wonderful in an invalidating way of the severity of the condition, but if it is as practical as just really considering your gut health. Firstly, I think that's quite empowering and invalidating in that, firstly, the diagnosis is not like a lifelong death sentence. Yeah, I had never considered the gut in any of this, but I mean, it makes sense because as the father of medicine, Hippocrates, said, like, all disease starts in the gut. So she specifically found that vitamin A has been an essential nutrient to help restore and replenish the gut, like food for the gut microbiome. And in that regard, liver, cod liver, omega-3s as well. So that's a great way of combining both, are really important for people with gut dysbiosis, but specifically for people with endometriosis.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think the gut is, I think I heard Zach Bush saying it the other day, like the gut is the brain.
It
People
is.
think that, but this is just the antenna, really.
Yeah.
Like it all happens in the gut. And I think so much intuition there, and we forget that is related to ourselves and our own authenticity, and there's so much, and we've lost touch with our own like authenticity in a very like metaphysical sense, and it's impacting our gut. But vice versa, if you don't feed it the right nutrition, obviously you are going to suffer. Your body is going to suffer. It's just the key that unlocks the wisdom within your body.
100%.
Yeah.
Just via the autonomic nervous system alone, there is the gut-brain axis, the vagus nerve, intertwined, and it's very much a symbiotic relationship for sure. And of course, the gut is the mechanism that interacts with our outside world, because we're eating and consuming things through our digestive tract that are coming from the outside world. So it's really our body's physiologic sensing like mechanism and organ, but it's also metaphysically as well and spiritually our sensing organ as well, as you said, like the gut instinct. So yeah, there's a lot definitely to unpack there.
It's weird how, like, I've noticed when I don't eat ancestrally aligned food and food that is predominantly unprocessed, I lose connection with my own intuition. It's weird how that's affected as well. It's like when I'm fueling myself with the best nutrition possible, I feel like I make better decisions. I feel like I'm more tapped into that authentic self of mine, and that I can live my authentic being, because when I'm eating processed shit or drinking alcohol or whatever, like it's crazy how disconnected I feel to my true authentic self. That's super, super valuable. You mentioned vitamin A, and you get high amounts of it in liver and things like that. I myself have been eating way more organs now, and I feel way more better with that. And I think it also has to do with the copper and the importance of copper in organs. But like from your side, you way more clued up on the intricacies of nutrition than I am, and I love it, because I take a very practical stance to nutrition, and I always think about it from the level of the dad at home who has diabetes and he has two kids and maybe he's divorced and he's having mental health troubles. Is he going to dive deep into nutrition? Maybe not, but if you can give him like a simple framework to follow something that can change his life, I'm sure he would be interested in it. But from your side, like that's why I'm speaking to you, is I always get a lot of information from you, but what else nutrition wise can you do to help heal the gut and tap back into your like authentic self through that nutrition?
Hacks that you can do to optimize your gut health. So I would definitely advise people to listen to that. But nutrition specifically, I think we're all bio-individual. You and I can have a whole podcast speaking about bio-individuality. Something about an elimination diet really does, carnivore, for example, put you in such a great space to, after a period of time being in an eliminated sort of like environments with your food specifically, you're then able to reintroduce foods. And from there, what I'm trying to get at is the first big thing is to eliminate things that cause havoc to the gut, and specifically your gut. So what may upset my gut may not necessarily upset your gut. Some very common culprits, though, for people who are struggling, and again, this, please, like, everyone is so bio-individual, but these are time and time again very common culprits. They're also common culprits for people with autoimmune conditions as well, but it's things like dairy, specifically pasteurized dairy, grains, gluten, and a whole lot of fiber. Contrary to popular belief, a lot of people don't actually do well with fiber, and there are quite a few amazing studies. I'm thinking one specifically of, Paul Mason, Dr. Paul Mason. I know that he did a study showing 100% improvement specifically with constipation on a zero fiber dietary intervention. I also know personally that a lot of people, just in general with plants, that often bloat people, especially if they're eaten raw. So if you do want to continue to eat plants, maybe it's just a different way of preparing them. Maybe you're boiling them so they're quite soft, so basically not eating them raw. But yeah, grains, gluten, dairy, and a whole lot of sugar are known culprits to cause a little bit of havoc to the gut. Foods that are supposedly touted as really beneficial for the gut are things like fermented foods. That I do put it on it as an asterisk, because depending on the severity of one's gut dysbiosis, it can actually, and especially things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that actually can cause more havoc than good, especially until you've gotten to the root of that and restored your gut microbiota. But really peeling all the layers back, I'm actually diving quite deep into Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride's work now. She like popularized, she is the founder of the GAPS diet. I don't know if you've heard of that, but gut and psychology syndrome or gut and physiology syndrome. And really it's about the whole premise of that protocol is to restore the villi and restore the gut lining in order to then basically heal and seal the gut. And as we've already alluded to, if you can do that, pretty much your whole health will be in check. She's had on the daily, she still gets people like putting themselves in remission from everything from schizophrenia, MS, anorexia, bulimia, meant like bipolar, depression, fibromyalgia, like just every condition under the sun, even cancer. She's had people. I'm not saying, again, this is not medical advice. It can't be because I'm not even a doctor, but I'm just pointing towards the importance of addressing your gut health. And her basic diet is really just warm soup as healing, and specifically a lot of animal protein and a lot of animal fat. Animal fat is probably the most healing to the gut. And I know that we can maybe dive deeper into this, but Dr. Mickey Bendor and his work, he's a doctor of archaeology at the University of Tel Aviv. His work alone has like almost shown and validated why something like animal fats are so healing for the gut, because as you've also alluded to, it's our species appropriate diet. So if you're feeding yourself the food that your physiology has evolved to expect, then of course you're going to function optimally. Similar to if you've bought a car that requires diesel petrol and you give it unleaded, it's not going to function optimally. You need to give it diesel and then it will function how it should and quote unquote authentically. Yeah, I would say removing foods that irritate the gut and really focusing on foods that restore the gut. So again, vitamin A, liver, but animal fats and soups, warm, soft foods. Those are what I would recommend. And then there are also a lot of other more on the line of spiritual or non-nutrition things that we can do to help with our gut. And that is very much an emphasis on stress management. Stress in and of itself is inflammatory and 100% causes gut dysbiosis, especially if you're stressed while you're eating. So yeah, anything that you can do that's going to help you put you into your bioindividual Zen space, and especially before and during eating, because again, give your body the chance to absorb those nutrients.
Mentioning it's warm soup just makes me think of the last 3 weeks like we've had in Cape Town. It's been so cold and rainy, and I just feel like some soup now.
Exactly.
You mentioned the elimination diets. Obviously, you have been in this realm, the carnivore realm, for a while now. Is there something is there items that you've introduced that maybe you haven't eaten before, or are you still sticking to the like primarily simple carnivore way of eating? I would just like to know. It would be interesting to hear your like evolution personally.
Sure. It's been quite a journey, and I have experimented with things here and there. I've tried incorporating some fruit. I've tried incorporating some vegetables. And honestly, where I'm at right now is back to the basics. I just feel my best when I'm primarily eating beef and lamb, ruminant meat. Actually, I eat the rainbow of meats now. I have fish, I have lamb, I have chicken, I have beef, but I really do prefer and feel the best on beef and lamb and ruminant meat. So yes, yeah, I wish it could be a little bit more extravagant, but not really. I actually love the liberation and the simplicity of it. So yeah, it's not that exciting, but it's very exciting to me.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but it's pretty standard. Hey?
Yeah.
It's just a big old bowl of meat. I love it.
Yeah, I quote you often. I use that saying.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It reminds me of the good old days. Myself and my partner at the moment have gone to a bit of a carnivore reset at the moment, and it's been super challenging, I must be honest. Like, I've been craving some stuff here or there, but it's weird how it's not something in particular. It's not like I want to overeat or something, but like I've been very flexible. I've always, like, meat has always been a primary food source for me, but I've noticed that just the chocolate at night, like the dark chocolates or something simple like that, can initiate a craving response. to a level that I didn't even know was there until I went back to simple like carnivore-ish diets. So I think it's always good to just test yourself and see where you're at with your diet and just get a feel for how, how your body responds to taking things out. It's like a very stoic-like way of, going about your life. But I must say, I do enjoy like things like avo and like berries and a bit of raw honey here or there. Especially, I love raw dairy as well. I'm like a fiend for raw dairy. I love dairy so much. Especially, I'm quite active at the moment, so like I feel like that doesn't do me any harm. But it's a great thing. I actually heard Paul Salino speaking the other day. I think it was on Jake Paul's podcast or whatever. He was saying like how you have this lever, and when you've understood yourself long enough and you know the foods that trigger you or don't, you can always turn that lever to which way you like. And like you say, you've basically turned it back to, oh wait, you know what, I actually feel great just on ruminant meat. And I'm going to eat the rainbow of meat, and that makes me feel great, and that makes me live my authentic life. And you have that sovereignty to do that, which is it's a gift, really. Hey?
Yeah, it's so cool. I've been a huge proponent, even just spiritually, of know thyself. And to know thy well is pretty cool. It's like a powerful tool to have as a lever, just knowing how your body responds to different foods, and also just being able to pivot and change and evolve with what your body is sending you signals and messages. But yeah, for the most part, with my severe mental health symptoms that I've experienced, like the carnivore diet keeps all of my symptoms at bay, and I do have to honor that. And I do view it as like my medicine, just how someone with MS would have a specific protocol, or someone with type 2 diabetes would have a specific protocol. If I want to keep my symptoms in remission, this is what I have to do. And I'm very lucky that it tastes freaking delicious. So yeah, I'm not really complaining.
Yeah, that's it. It's almost like indistinguishable when you eat meat. It's just such a primal craving that I can't get over it. I'm very passionate about making this accessible to everyone, especially people our age who maybe work
Yeah.
very simple jobs but want to like maybe afford the cuts of meat or whatever. But there is no better feeling than cooking a nice juicy steak, and for me, like just having a bit of avo with it, and that's your meal. It's so fucking good. Like I can't, like even thinking about it now is making me hungry.
Yeah, I've just eaten and I could still go eat more.
Yeah, there we go. There
Yeah.
we go. And that's another thing that I've actually noticed going back to this more like carnivore way of eating is that my appetite is actually stronger now, and stronger in a way that feels healthy. Because I feel like when your appetite is suppressed like almost all the time, that's not a sign of good health. You should be hungry and you should be wanting some food, not in a very like sluggish way, but I have that appetite and I have that want to eat more. And like I take that as a sign of good health to have that appetite, that strong craving for more.
For sure, for sure. I was literally speaking to my friend yesterday about this. I said I've got a very big appetite, and we were both like, it's probably a very healthy thing. Yeah.
And is there little hacks or little ways you make the diet accessible slash affordable? I don't know how you would tackle that,
For
but
sure. So
it's something that always comes up.
I also wish I could live on steak. I love steak, but the reality of the situation is that steaks are the more expensive. Also, they only have the muscle meat ancestrally was not really consumed as much as the more collagenous bits. So I actually tend to love the more collagenous cuts of meat. So like the ribs and the brisket and chuck and the legs and the shins, or whatever, part of the animal that I'm butchering now, excuse the pun. But really the collagenous, more roasting, stewing cuts of meat are actually cheaper. So, and they house all the things like the good collagen and basically balancing out more of the methionine and glycine ratio. So in the muscle meat, it's just methionine, but then when you've got the more collagenous bone-in cuts, so I'm also speaking about chicken now as well, like literally think of the bone-in. Even if you can, it's one of my favorite things to do, maybe I'm biased, but if you can cook your chicken, especially, you can do this easily if you have made a soup, because then the bones do get a little bit soft, but chew some of the bone that you can chew. It's my favorite thing to do. Chew the gristle, have the skin on. All those like niggly bone in collagenous cuts are a lot cheaper than the steaks and just the meat alone. So, and that's where you're getting your collagen. It's where you're getting your glycine. Like, you don't need to go and buy some expensive collagen supplement, which the supplement industry is so unregulated now. You probably are maybe even getting sawdust. You actually don't even know. Rather just buy chicken wings and actually eat everything, eat the skin, or buy the more collagenous cuts of meat. So yeah, and then also a big thing is buying in bulk, which can be hard, especially when you're living alone. But if you have a freezer, then of course that's great. You can just, even if you batch cook yourself like a big meal, and then you can have that for throughout the week. Are also what I have found cheaper. I actually don't even go to the grocery store anymore. I actually just order straight from like specific farms, and there are amazing farms in South Africa. South Africa houses some of the best meat in the world. So there are a lot of farmers doing a lot of amazing work, and their price lists are pretty amazing. Like, for example, short ribs are like, from the one particular farmer that I buy, is like under 90 Rand a kilogram. And they're like these fatty, collagenous beef short ribs that I'm just like, and the fat is so yellow, it's grass-fed, grass-finished, so there's a win situation. So there are ways, if you do your research, when you're buying directly from the farmer, not only are you supporting local, but you're bypassing the third party, which is the grocery store. We can maybe go on a whole tangent of food quality, but again, I don't want that to stop people from, even if it is from a grocery store and it's on special, always look for specials. There always will be specials. Also buy meat still from the grocery store sometimes if I need to. But yeah, I think the watching for specials and the more collagenous cuts of stewing meat, which does take longer and slower to cook, I understand, but it's not that difficult if you have your priorities, and it's actually quite fun sometimes, and you can batch cook. So also, instead of buying like just chicken legs and chicken thighs, it's cheaper to buy and more economical just to buy the whole chicken, and then you're getting the whole food matrix of the whole chicken in its entirety, and you're probably getting the pieces of meat in the ratio that nature intended technically, because you're not eating like 20 wings or 20 legs because it's just one bird. Not that's a bad thing. I often have just like 20 chicken wings. But yeah, there's amazing farms in South Africa specifically, and I'm pretty sure everywhere in the world, and to get in contact with them and get to know them is also really fun. Eggs also relatively inexpensive, and I think per kilogram, I honestly think that animal foods are, I could be mistaken, but I've seen, for example, like the price of cereal per kilogram in America, it's like way more than the price of meat per kilogram, per pound in America. But yeah, I've actually been wanting to go to a grocery store and look at the price per kilo of plants and other foods, comparing it to meat and amount of time. So you're actually technically going to be eating less as well. You're also most likely going to be spending less on pills and prescriptions and needing to go see your doctor, because you're going to be strengthening your immune system. You're not going to get sick as much. So a lot of people, when they do choose to eat healthily and prioritize at least real whole foods, they can even get off most of their medications. So then you're going to be saving on that as well. You're going to be sleeping better. So it does. I would also go back to priorities, even if it's okay, maybe you're spending a lot of money on subscriptions that you're not even aware of. Yeah, but those are my, also canned fish, as long as it's in salt water, is also, I often have tinned mackerel or sardines sometimes. Yeah, and also like beef tallow, you can make it like your own. You can render it from, you can just get like pieces of fat from, or suet from any butchery, and it's so cheap, and you can make your own. You don't have to go and buy beef tallow from the store, or butter even. It's definitely cheaper than butter. And ghee, specifically, ghee is also really expensive. So there are ways, and yeah, that's offhand what I can think. Organ meats are amazing as well, and they're also super cheap. So there's a win situation.
Yeah. It's very interesting how you mentioned about the farm. It's weird. Like I've got this like picture in my head. It's like a triangulation, because you can buy from, let's just say Woolies, which is, let's just say, relatively cheaper than going to a specialty butcher that sells specialty grass-fed cuts. But if you go straight to the farm, it's dirt cheap. So it's like this weird, like, I don't know, this intersection, because it's obviously not going to be, cheap to buy the expensive cuts. But like, I've also found, eating mincemeat is a great way to get your protein. Obviously, you're not getting those like collagenous nutrients that you mention, But it is just a great way just to get in your mince, your protein, and your fats. And I've actually been mixing the Wagyu mince with like normal mince,
Oh,
and then I mix that together, and that creates a beautiful flavor that's not too overwhelming, but also very satiating and also very tasty. So that's really cool. But I'm glad you mentioned that we South Africa, and I just see potential. I just see so much potential to just make the farmer the hero, because that's what they are. The people that are doing the stuff that we enjoy doing, which is grass-fed, grass-finished farming and ethical meat production, is the people that need to be compensated directly. There's no better way, there's no better feeling than having a relationship directly with the farmer and buying bulk and all of these things you mentioned. It's something that people just don't know. We've lost touch with how easy, if you want it to be, how easy it is to make this work, because the grocery store, the modern grocery store, is like a mini corporation in and of itself. They don't really care about the farmers and stuff. They just care about the way the grocery store looks, how the packaging looks, whether the meat lasts fucking 2 months on the shelf, whether anything lasts on the shelf. If something doesn't last on the shelf, then they don't really want it in their store. That's a big thing. But yeah, like you say, I think if you care about your health and you care about things, you make it work, and that's a superpower in and of itself.
yeah, for sure. And I think also don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So I also still eat grain-fed meat often, and just given Sacred Cow, the book, and what Rob Wolf and Diana Rogers have brought about as well, I don't necessarily fear grain-fed meats at all. But what I do fear is just not, I think there are consequences of just, I do have pushback when people comment on like factory farming and things, which I don't think industrialization of anything is natural, because yeah, you said we've lost touch with ourselves. We've definitely lost touch with how nature even works. If you want a solution to like climate change, period, we need regenerative agriculture. We need it. We literally need it. Going against nature and monocropping and killing ecosystems is just, I can go on those tangents, but
No, go on it, but you are right. Like it's just indicative to the way society works now and the way we study as well. I think we mentioned before, but like university degrees and stuff, and everything now is done in isolation. Like we have somebody that, not that I'm bashing doctors because they play a critical role. I got surgery on my wrist, and without a person that specializes in the wrist and bone grafts, and my wrist would probably be a bit fucked. But so I'm super grateful. But like you get somebody that specializes, somebody that is a specialist in the liver, and then they study the liver in isolation. But nothing works in isolation. The ideology of the cancer cell is actually isolation. It's something that grows without any consideration for anything around it. And that's how monocropping works. Monocropping is basically like a cancerous spread of one crop
yeah,
in nature, without regard or without integration of anything. And if something wants to integrate with that monocrop, we spray pesticides in it, like glyphosate, because we don't want the weed on there, but then we ingest that. So yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty scary to think.
yeah.
And like you said, the answer is here. It's in South Africa. Like the answer is all around us. It's
Literally.
regenerative, grass-fed agriculture. I love Farmer Angus for this. Like I've been to his farm a few times, and I've just spent some time there, and I find a lot of like peace and solace just being there.
He's so cool.
But it's his farm, this like regenerative farm, and then if you go the next road next to him, it's the strawberry farm with fucking nets over it. Like, what are you
Pesticide.
doing? Really? Pesticides,
Yeah,
and that's all for profit. That's all for profit.
100%.
It's all because they clearly haven't figured a way, or that's not natural to grow strawberries there, whatever. And we ingest that.
Well, it's adopting the industrialization mindset. We have to scale and people. So I think, again, I don't think it's all necessarily like ill-intentioned, like malicious people. It's just applying since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, applying that type of mindset. But I don't think anyone has really taken the time, and I think we have shot ourselves in the foot, because it's like that advert. I think was it Sunland or something? It's what could go wrong. I think our current state of health in this entire world right now is this is what happens when you go so far away from nature. So I am hopeful of this movement slowly going back to like mimic just living in a way that our physiologies expect, because we're still the same physiologies as our hunter-gatherer ancestors, and we're living in this toxic pool of just chemicals everywhere. And going back to gut health, antibiotics are known things to cause havoc to the gut, because basically, by definition, antibiotics like basically anti-life, so they kill all the good and bad bacteria, which of course is necessary for a bacterial infection 100%. But a lot of people get put on antibiotics that firstly they're like even unaware of. A doctor would just prescribe, oh, you've got acne, take this, and it's actually like an antibiotic. Or, oh, you've got a bladder infection, like not necessarily looking for the root cause of the bladder infection, and not necessarily looking at the bio-individual person sitting in front of them. Maybe she is a hormonal menopause, sorry, not hormonal, but a menopausal woman. And it's a very common symptom of menopause because losing words, you can edit this out, but it's a very common symptom with a menopausal woman is bladder infections, and then they get told to drink this thing and it's an antibiotic. But what Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride is saying is that not only are we ingesting antibiotics through these pills and actual medicines, but we're also ingesting them through the foods that we're eating, because they're sprayed with pesticides. What are pesticides? They're basically antibiotics. They're anti-life. So I think that also speaks to the importance of knowing, at least acknowledging where your food is coming from and just trying to do your best. I'm not saying that everyone has to go completely organic, because I also know that whole industry is also a little bit, has been capitalized on and whatever. But really, no one can really go wrong from getting to know their farmer and even growing it yourself. Have you also ever tried to grow your own fresh produce? It's very difficult. Because a lot of the time it dies if you don't spray it with things. So it is difficult, but it's not impossible, and it's probably a lot healthier. At least you are in control with what goes on to those products. But that was, and also plants in and of themselves, and again, I'm not trying to make anyone fearful, but plants in and of themselves have their own inbuilt pesticides, just by virtue of the fact that they cannot run away from us or any predators. So that in and of itself can also cause gut inflammation.
Going back to the gut and what you said, it's essentially, it's just disconnection, because when you grow your own food and it dies, you understand very quickly maybe what went wrong or what could have happened, but either way you are connected to your food source, and we're just so far disconnected from our food source. It feels weird and strange sometimes to me how disconnected people are, and how, again, like one of my favorite quotes, and it reminds me of my guide that I'm currently working with, Nathan, who's been of great benefit to me as a male walking this undulating path we call life. I can't stress enough how important it is to have somebody that you can speak to on a spiritual level or therapeutic level or whatever, which we can maybe get into.
For sure.
He speaks about it's no measure of good health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. What we consider normal and what we consider healthy today is not normal. It's so far removed from normal. Even look at my book there, The Myth of Normal. What is normal?
Yeah.
You spoke about stress and stress reduction, and that as well, that's like a huge thing. What are some of the tools that you've implemented yourself, or that you can maybe offer that is tangible for people to use to reduce their stress, so that their gut lining has a chance to revive and relearn the ways of the primal self?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do is I facilitate breathwork and singing classes to help activate the vagus nerve, strengthen the vagus nerve, and also activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically my TED Talk come to life, because my TED Talk was all about that. If you want to think of one of the biggest hacks that is a godsend of a hack for your whole state of being, it is your breath. And the yogis were not far off when they described the breath as life force. We, just by modifying our breath, can literally modify our entire state of being. Specifically with stress, we really want to get ourselves from that sympathetic nervous system, which is the stress-activated running away from a tiger state, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is think paradise. That's how I like to remember it. And the greatest ways to get there is long, slow deep breathing, specifically a longer exhale than your inhale. So 4-7-8 breathing is a very popular and effective specific breathwork exercise that I teach a lot of people. And it's essentially you're inhaling for a count of 4, you're holding for a count of 7, and you're exhaling for a count of 8. So you can really clearly see that you're double the exhale than you were the inhale. So whenever you want to just, it can be any arbitrary number, but really want to try emphasize a longer exhale than inhale. Like, it's a game changer. Box breathing is another great example of this. It's not necessarily a longer exhale, and in that regard, it's more of like a neutralizing sort of breathwork technique, but it's still very freaking effective. But any breathwork practice where your exhale is longer than your inhale, specifically with singing, even just humming, just utilizing your voice, chanting, gargling even, that helps activate and stimulate the vagus nerve. Even if you just want to put on one of your favorite songs, which is already therapeutic enough, even just to listen to music that you like, it's known to help just restore, replenish all the good things. But hum along to that, or just begin to hum a song when your kettle is boiling. Like, just trying to, again, implement some breathwork and some singing. Other things, again, I'm going to go back to like bioindividuality, because a walk in nature is just everything to me. That gets me into a Zen state, but it may not be it for someone else. So, whatever it is, as I said, like gentle walking or Tai Chi, yoga. There are so many. I also have on my podcast, shameless plug, but there's so many guided meditations and like yoga nidra things on YouTube. Like, we are really in an abundance. I think it really comes down to, you just have to give yourself the time. And I know that stress management is something we've all heard so many times and it like goes over our heads, but like truly, if you want to cause inflammation in your body, be stressed. And I think when you can understand the physiology of what stress can do, you can therefore understand why as well, up and above the standard westernized diet that everyone's consuming, why we are in the state of chronic disease that we are in the world. Because who isn't stressed? I think it's really giving yourself, again, it's about priorities. Get this, physiologically speaking, like, you deserve not to be stressed. Like, think of your cells that are stressed. Like, you don't want that to be inflamed. You don't want to cause more stress to an already stressed system. If something is free, like our breath, it costs nothing. It costs nothing. It also costs nothing to meditate. It costs nothing to speak to a friend or play a song. And then also a game changer is trying as much as possible to breathe through your nose. That also increases your nitric oxide production, because essentially when we're breathing through our mouths, we're sending a signal to our bodies that we're stressed. We're running away from a tiger at active nervous system. So learning to breathe through your nose as much as possible, even while you're reading emails. Also they've actually, I don't know if you know this, but they've coined the term email apnea. In that when people are reading emails and scrolling on social media mindlessly, they actually forget to breathe. We need breath. Our brains need breath. Yeah. Speaking about being disconnected, I feel like a lot of us are just living from the neck up. We really need to come back down to our bodies. I also love teaching people to place their hands on their belly and breathe in a way where they can feel their hands rise and fall. It's basically diaphragmatic or belly breathing. This is how we're meant to breathe. This is literally how we're meant to breathe. If you look at babies, this is how babies breathe. You can see their bellies rise and fall. A lot of us are just breathing shallow, like up here in our chests. That's like basically hyperventilating. And I'll end off this little tangent on stress with one of my greatest acting lecturers, Claire Berlaine. She helped me for one of my biggest auditions. I unfortunately did not get it. But in this particular scene, my character was running away from threats, and she was like literally running for her life. And the technique that Claire had utilized in my rehearsal was go to your breath. Go to your breath immediately. Like, how would you be breathing when you're running away from a threat? You're hyperventilating, right? So actors literally use the power of breath to get themselves into the state of their characters as a hack. So it can go the converse as well. So if my character was very calm and stressed, then I would have a low, grounded breath to hack my biology and my state of being into whatever is expected and required for my character.
I love that, Kelsey, because the breath, it's so crucial. It's literally, I almost like to think, it's so much so that I like to think of, if I think about the reason why I enjoy exercising or running or whatever, it's actually the art of breathing. It's actually the art of putting yourself in a stressful situation purposefully in order to control your breathing. Because if you just start like breathing rampantly when you run, like you will hyperventilate and you will just lie on the sidewalk and probably never run again. But when you exercise or when you walk, whatever, you are breathing. It's the art of breathing. So thank you for sharing that, because again, that ties into the whole concept of not looking at things as the secular modality like nutrition. Nutrition is super important, and you can eat carnivore and you can do all the things, but if you don't breathe properly and you don't control the other stresses in your life, it doesn't matter how well you eat, it's things are going to come up, things are going to affect you, and your body is going to be in a stressed state. Your genes are going to be affected. So yeah, that's super important. And yeah, you look like you want to say something.
I just want to share one more little insight that I learned recently as well, on the breath and eating well, especially if you're in the low carb space. But if you are not breathing deep and low and slow enough, basically you're hyperventilating, so you're putting your body into that sympathetic state, you're going to kick yourself out of ketosis. You're going to inhibit your body's ability to burn fat for fuel. And it makes sense when you think of glycolytic exercise, for example. So just a thought there as well.
Obviously, we can go down a massive rabbit hole that side. Maybe we can schedule this for a round two.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add into the mix today before we wrap this up? I've been really appreciative of your time, and it's been so good having you back.
Yeah, so awesome to catch up, Josh. I think I'll just leave with the fact that no one knows everything. Everyone's still learning. That is the only constant in life is change. Like quite literally, not any doctor, researcher, like everyone is just on their own journey. No one knows the answer. And I think the person who knows you best is yourself. So again, going back to bioindividuality, like really just lean into your body's intuition, and also don't doubt yourself. Like you are also your own science experiment. You are also your own health advocate. You are your CEO of your life. So partner with people. And by people, like partner with your doctor. Don't view your doctor as think of it as like a collaboration. You should be equally involved in your health as the doctor is. In fact, you should be more involved in your health than the doctor is, because your body better than the doctor does. The doctor is not necessarily inside of your body. So yeah, I just want to leave off with everyone. I have been back into studying. I've been lectured by some of the world's greatest lecturers and researchers and doctors in the whole health optimization space. It has been amazing and eye-opening, but I'm telling you, the more everyone learns, the more we just realize we don't know. And at the end of the day, keep going back to you, because it can be so easy to get caught up and in the noise and all the research, and it is very overwhelming and exciting for sure, but really go back to the basics, go back to you, go back to your breath.
And for those that don't know, where can they find you? What are you up to in the world these days on all the socials? I'll obviously link everything in the show notes, but where can people find you, and what's the easiest way to get hold of you?
Sure. So you can, if you want to listen to my podcast, it's The Human Theatre on Spotify, Apple, all other streaming platforms. Not on YouTube yet, working on it. And then I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn, and it's just my name and surname. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Kelsey. I will look forward to our round, I don't know, what is it at the stage, round 5 or something.
Yeah.
We've had a few podcasts together, but I'll look forward to that. And yeah, I'm sure many people will get a lot of value out of your insane amounts of knowledge that you have on all things health and beyond.